Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry, that took a glip. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm really excited. I have my new friend, Andy Greider, with me. Andy, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell the guests a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Jeff. It's really a pleasure to be here. A big shout out to Mark McClatchy, who I know has been on your show before as a introducer here. And to that point, I think all three of us share a vital core, which is as connectors and networkers and introducers and catalysts. That's kind of what I do. That's what I've done for a long time. My my background runs everything from journalism and TV production to bartending to consulting from the Fortune 50 down to the mom and pop level. So that's a little bit of background. Personally, I'm a music nut, and I love to make my own hot sauces. I love to travel. There you go. There's some background very quickly.
Fun background. By the way, when you say hot sauces, remind me I have to introduce you to Liam Darmody. He's obsessed with hot sauces, and a super connector as well.
I was gonna say I know Liam via LinkedIn, but that's it. So that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
See, this is the wonderful world of networking and connecting. And yes, thank you to Mark. He is fabulous. So the point of this show is obviously I want to have a little fun, and I love meeting visionary entrepreneurs. So let's talk about what you're working on, what you're excited right now, and then we're going to get into how you entered that realm, if that's fair.
Right on. That's great. Awesome. So what am I working on now? 700 different things. Will be specific though to really two today, I guess. But the main things that are being worked on right now, I'm finishing a book that is all about the connector mentality and modality, and kind of what got me there and brought me there. So this will be a good little bit of a overview of some of that. And then I'm working with a company called Capitalogix, Logix at the end, and their program called Goodlogix as well. So we work with a lot of industries with parked money. We work with a lot of nonprofits, and a lot of corporate social responsibility campaigns, family offices, foundations, people that support that same sort of area of nonprofits. In short, it's a wealth protection money acceleration platform that allows you to combine three variables that normally don't get combined. It's low volatility, it's really nice returns, and it's reasonable liquidity, which normally it's like Goodfest, sheet pick two. You get two of those normally. we can do all three, and then we can do more. So that's a quick overview of what's going on here. Outside of that, my days are occupied by keeping care of our three rescue dogs, and trying to keep the car on the road and out of the ditches.
I love it. Now, one of the things I get asked a lot, how does one become a visionary entrepreneur? And I'm sorry to say, but the only answer I know is you're born one. Because I think we see the world just differently from an early age. When do you remember starting to realize how different you were and how you were on a path to being an entrepreneur, not an employee?
So I've tried to wear the employee hat numerous times, and let's just say promptly failed, or maybe not promptly, but failed. But you asked when? Age 15, probably. I was. This will take you back a little ways and show that I'm old, but that's okay. Video store, VHS rental store. And I was working there as a teenager and selling VCRs to soccer moms before there were soccer moms. And
Wow.
I spawned a cottage industry out of that by finding all the kids that I could get them to tape like the World Cup instead of sending their kids to soccer camp, and they could watch that and learn from that. And so that was my line to get them. When a kid that smelled like chlorine, I'd get them to look at and watch the Olympics and tape the Olympics and say, here's the swimmers that are really good, watch their strokes. And if you can't afford to send your kid to camp, you can afford a VCR, right? But then what came about, if you remember, and this is the entrepreneurial twist, selling the VCRs was just part of the job. But the entrepreneurial twist was, back in the day, if you remember, you had to dial in stations, the little dials, before there was auto programming. And so I had two of my, let's say, tech savvy geek friends, they were a little older than I was, who were willing to go out and set up the VCRs for these folks that had bought them. and I charged $100 to set it up. I took 50, I gave 50 to them, and became a cottage little industry. And we started doing it to the point where it turned into more than that. So, at 15, I kind of had my own little cottage industry and business and said, I really like this. So the juices started flowing then.
I love the origin story, because I think with entrepreneurs, we see problems differently. I see regular folks who go, oh, well, it is what it is. And I look at it and go, why has nobody fixed this?
We have a philosophy with the one group that I work with, Buzz and I, Domestic Growth Capital. We don't want people that bring us just the problems. We only want to work with people that are looking for the solutions and have recognized the problems. And that's really a definition of what you're talking about on the visionary entrepreneur side. So many of us look for how to meet someone where there's friction and turn that into something positive. And realize how to expand from there and catalyze from there. And often we get to do it, and I think you'll probably agree with this, Jeff, by bringing the right people to the table. And that's really our form of business development. So good stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's a funny thing. I have very, very strange hobbies, and one of my hobbies, I look at business and I figured, if success is measured by impact and by dollars, the billionaires amongst us are clearly the gold medal winners at the Business Olympics. And a lot of people want to get into the morality and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. If we're just talking about wealth acquisition, I cannot say enough about the billionaires, because they have done something different that the rest of us haven't contemplated. But one of the funny things I found in almost every billionaire I studied, in their biographies or what have you, is that not one of them said, I'm a self-made billionaire. They all talk about how their network lifted them up.
The only one that I've seen say self-made is Elon. But beyond that, yeah, I agree with that completely. And I love the fact that they understand that there's not just a connecting support structure, but there's actually a safety net, a web underneath it as well. Most of them had something going for them, whether that was the background with the family that had the ability to catch them if they fell and things like that. So I think you get to the highest heights because you get to shoot at the longest targets without worry of the risk. I think that's the one thing that trips up a lot of entrepreneurs, is they start worrying about risk. And then as soon as you do that, you lose a lot of your visionary as well. And I think that slows people down. But a colleague of mine by the name of David Wolf, who coined a saying back in the day that we had on a sign in most of our consulting engagements that said, you never get used to jumping off a cliff, jump anyway. And I think that's a sign for most visionary entrepreneurs, is you never do get used to it, but you got to do it every day. Like you mentioned in our prologue, our preamble to this is, ask me what time it is and I'll tell you what the day looks like from here, but I can't tell you it's going to look the same way tomorrow. And I love that about being an entrepreneur and a connector. It's really good for my ability to get bored. It doesn't happen very often.
And honestly, I think that's what I love about visionary entrepreneurs. And I find it fascinating because, again, back to the billionaire study, almost all of them started because they had an intense pain in their life. A lot of them were surprisingly homeless or went through some very tough times. And their first part of their wealth journey was, I'm never going to be that person again. They were literally killing their old self moving forward. Mm-hmm. And every single one of them, except possibly Elon, at some point said, I've got enough. Now I'm going to contribute back to the world. And I find it fascinating that Bill Gates takes a lot of heat for being a wealthy IT founder, but very few people recognize all of the charitable work he's done.
Yeah. There's a part to that that's really interesting to me, Jeff. And I would say that I agree with most of what you're saying there personally. But I believe in the term altruistic capitalism, which is you do good for other people, you do things that help other people, you solve problems, you make money, and then you use a lot of that money to do more good things for other people. And that's kind of what you're describing and what you're talking about. The unfortunate part is there's an awful lot of people that I run into that say, oh, I'm going to do really good things once I make a lot of money. And then they go make a lot of money and they forget the second part. And they become a dragon with their treasure, right? It's hoarding and putting on it and saying, I've got more than you, and I win. I really I grok a lot more with the people who are more on the altruistic capital side, altruistic capitalism side, where the goal is to do good and to build win-win-win solutions. So I mean, and again, that's another underlying philosophy for me, Jeff, is win-win-win, not just win-win, but add the third win, because if it's you and me building a deal, you win, I win, and the people who are affected by the deal win. Yeah. Whatever's going to happen, there's actually a good result. It's not just you and I make money, if that makes sense.
There's a fabulous book out there. It's an older one and it's getting harder to find. It's called The Strategy of the Dolphin by Dudley Lynch and Paul Cordes. And he actually talks about 3 types of people in business. You'll recognize these stereotypes immediately. There's the carp, they're the consumers. They believe in absolute scarcity and they play to not lose. So they're always playing defense. Now we've got the sharks, and the sharks believe in a zero-sum game, and they believe in scarcity as well. However, their version of scarcity is there's enough. I just have to take it from you so you don't take it from me. And then there's a third group, and I feel like this one you're going to love. They're dolphins, and basically they look for simple, elegant solutions. And their version is when we play together, we all win. And instead of trying to allocate the spoils of whatever we're doing, they're building the machines, and they truly embrace abundance. And it's a fascinating thing because the dolphins can play sharks or carp in the moment, depending on what's going on. But ultimately, their view is, and like you say, altruistic capital. I hate the arbitrary divide between for-profit and non-profit. I believe that for-profits should be doing some of the non-profit stuff because you can't measure it on a balance sheet, but goodwill is so incredible.
Well, it's universal karma too, Jeff, is what goes around comes around, and what you put out, you get back. And it's not always instant karma, but it comes back around. And I like corporations that have the CSR campaigns, the corporate social responsibility campaigns. I like the groups that tie into a nonprofit and teach them how to have a for-profit wing, which I'm seeing more and more and more of. There's a consultant I do a lot of work with, Pamela Ayers, who's out of Rochester, and she's brilliant and has started to, with all the changes with grants and with the SBA loans and things like that, it's really changed a lot of nonprofits worlds to where they've got to get a lot more creative because the transactional donor side of things is dying, and it's a whole different world. That's a place that there's so many solves that can come in if they're open to it. So many different bigger ideas that might be better. With time and piloting, we'll figure that out. But we'll see.
And it's funny because people recognize themselves in others. And I'm going to share, when I read The Go-Giver, I had bought it, and for some reason I had an attitude chip problem about the whole concept of business fables and parables. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to it later. But the book sat on my shelf for the longest time. And then COVID hit and everybody said, oh, networking's dead. And I went, oh my God, networking's dead. I better read how to revive it. And when I read the book, it was literally like my soul was shook and woken up, because there's like one little character who's mentioned once in the whole book called the Connector. And I went, that's who I am. And Bob and John David Mann gave me the language to speak and explain what I am. But the fascinating part is that book has brought me more good relationships than anything, because I now use it in casual conversations. And there are, believe it or not, people who scoff when you say something is innocuous as the go-giver. And it's like, that tells me a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. There are certain klaxon warning signs that come out very unintentionally from certain people that you learn to read. I was fortunate enough early in my career in journalism, actually, to learn how to read body language and learn facial expressions and hear tonal changes in voice and things like that have served me really well ever since then. But The Go-Giver is a book that I think defines the heart of what I do, what you do, what Mark does, what so many other people that are in that sort of category of connectors who help catalyze things and do good for others, all because you lead with giving, you lead with trust, you lead with bringing things together that are much better as a total whole, and then they are the sum of their parts. And that really, that's the goal. And I love that that's in you. I love that's in this whole modality of what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Well, I got to share something. When I first read Bob Berg's book, Endless Referrals, I was like, oh my God, Bob gave me language and a system for what I was doing anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I was very inconsistent, because I'd do something and it would work and then I'd get busy. But when they gave me Go-Giver, they gave me the identity, and I went, oh my God, these are my people. And Bob said something to me once, and it was meant to be taken differently, I think, than it was. He said, you can't outgive the universe. And I took it as a challenge. And I said, you know what? I'm probably going to lose, but I love this game. And my brain, it hates to be told you can't do something. I'm happy to say he was 100% correct. But you know what? I'm still playing as if I can't lose, because I can't.
Well, it's, you can't compete with me. I want you to win too. And that's what he means by you can't outgive the universe. But I get it. It's a challenge in my book too. I've been competitive since I was a little kid. I was an older brother, first of all, that honed some skills there. The second part was I competitively swam for years. I played water polo. I still am competitive, even if it comes to board games and things like that. I love to do what I can to do the best I can. And, if that comes down to the introducing world, my biggest issue is not overpromising. Not saying here's 15 people I can introduce you to, because there are usually at the end of a meeting, but I've got to figure out which 3 or 4 are the most valuable and make those introductions so they actually happen. You mentioned earlier, systems that help you stay in place. And that's something I've concentrated really hard on building and formatting, is how do you do that? And then how do you, after you make a connection, how do you make sure it comes to fruition? How do you give it the best breath of air to breathe into it to make it happen? And that's been an evolutionary journey over the last 10 or 15 years of really trying to learn that. I wanted to circle back to something, though, that you said that was a surprise to me, because I don't think I ever heard it. You said when COVID hit, people said networking is dead.
You didn't hear that?
Wow. In-person networking was dead. Like meetings was dead. Okay, that's fair. But I actually think that tools like LinkedIn and other places caused a actual uptick in what I was doing, connecting and networking wise. So, I mean, I think it moved its venues. You weren't face-to-face, belly-to-belly cocktail hour, right? You weren't in that modality. And I'll tell you flat out, I had a old friend of mine from Atlanta call me and say, we're screwed. This whole thing, my guys are face-to-face breakfast and cocktail hour kind of guys, right? That's how they do their business. How do I teach them how to use, online stuff. And
Well,
so
the funny thing,
I did it. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I'll share the funny thing. So for context, everybody who told me networking was dead were golf networkers. So
Right.
their version of networking, arguably, truly, was dead. The funny part, I've been on video conferencing since back in the days of what was it, Any Meeting or whatever it was,
Oh,
Go-To
wow.
Meeting.
Okay, yeah, me too. Yeah.
I actually signed up for Zoom. I was onboarded by employee number 12.
Wow.
I can't remember their name, but I know he was very proud to be employee number 12. And he was like, I hope we get number 13 soon because I'm tired of being the new guy. But the funny thing was they said you can't network on video conference. And I looked at them and I said, you know what? And this is the wonderful thing about beliefs. If you believe it, it's true. And if you believe it's false, it's false. And I chose to believe that, I came in with the expectation I'd be 80% as effective. But what I didn't factor in was, as an introvert, how much energy it was taking Jeff to get to live events. God help us if there was music in the venue or clinking glasses and noise. There was a lot. And then, somebody would decide, oh, we should have handheld appetizers with drinks. Who thought of that? I'm spending most of my energy trying to keep the shrimp cocktail off my shirt and, not drop my drink. And then it's like, okay, I'm here and I've got all these business cards. Okay, how do I remember what to do with them? Now I'm like, I'm a genius at my keyboard because I take notes and then I follow up, right?
Jeff, I'm only laughing because damn, do I resemble that remark. That entire string, including keeping the cocktail shrimp off my shirt, and it's usually a landing pad, right? It never seems to work properly. I'm not at all socially awkward. I'm definitely more outgoing and gregarious and verbose, and why use 5 words when 20 will do? But I'm a big believer also in the in-person networking that I used to have to drive to. I used to have to drive home from. I used to sometimes have to be more performative in how I did things in those events than I ever will be on Zoom. Here I'm authentic. Here I'm real. And I've gotten to the point where, I have a credo that stuck with me from the marketing company I ran, the branding group that I was part of, that I ran for years. Share your vibe, find your tribe. And, and I really do believe you find the 5% of people who will support you through thick and thin by being you. And as soon as you try to be someone else, you please 80% of the people or 60% of the people or even 20% of the people, but they don't stick with you. So why would you do that? So anyway, that's a whole other piece. But yeah, I really do completely jive with what you're talking about what Zoom has done for connectors and what online conferencing, put it that way. Let's not give all the business to one group, but what they've done for the ability to do this kind of thing and the ability to do outreach and the ability to bring people together from all over the globe. Half my network is not in anywhere near my proximity. I could not meet them in person. Now, do I still go to networking events? Very selectively, very occasionally. I meet individual people a lot more often one-to-one than I do go to an event. Because online you can gather the 30 people who are connectors and put them in the same room and have a conversation where we can all help each other. In a networking situation, like an in-person deal, you're meeting probably 90% of the people that are there are not the people you need to be talking to if you're going to move your business forward.
Yeah.
Unless it's an intentional group. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think that's I love the BNIs and the local organized stuff. There's flaws, don't get me wrong, but I love the intention of it, and the actual execution sometimes leaves something to be desired. But the fundamental problem I had with in-person networking is I'm busy trying to remember who I've met so far. And oh God, I met somebody new, and I have ADHD. So at some point I forget the conversation, and it was like, oh, okay. And so I do little cheats, and I'd have, I always had a marker, and I'd write on the back of business cards, but it always, good intentions fell apart when I'd leave the meeting, because I'd drop my stack of business cards, bunch would fall under my seat, and I'd be like, oh crap. So I like Zoom because I'm organized, or video conferencing.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, any video conferencing allows you to be a lot more organized, and then with note takers and things like that, you can certainly help gather thoughts that you might have missed while you're typing. But I have a feeling, Jeff, you're going to relate to this, because I know you said you take notes during meetings. So if I'm not taking notes, and I'm not today for this, obviously, but if I'm not taking notes, my memory is not as good. I'm a tactile learner, that if I sit and I type while someone's talking and I'm listening and typing at the same time, it allows my brain to kick into gear and start to pull things and arrange them and go, hey, yeah, that and play that game in my head while I'm absorbing. And I can listen to understand much more than I listen to respond. I find when I'm in person, I really have to fight listening to respond as a modality. I'm much better at it over the internet and over conferencing. So I don't know if that's true for you too, but it's an interesting phenomenon.
It's definitely, I can be more present online because I'm not worried about what I'm supposed to remember. And I think that's, I don't know why, but for some reason I was kind of the opinion you can't bring a notebook to a networking event. Now, having said that, I'm like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah. Well, I used to take my reporter notebooks, the thin, long notebooks.
I was just going to say.
Could slide it into my back pocket really easily if need be, if I was in a conversation that I didn't need it or I didn't feel like it was useful. But I'd also often sketch notes about somebody while they were talking. And I also, my grandmother taught me stenographer shorthand. I still can pretty much do. If you ever look at one of my yellow tablets that sits next to the desk here while I'm taking notes, you'd look at it and say half of it you understand and half of it looks like scribble. I get it because of what I was taught, but it's like another language. It's like learning Spanish or learning something else. And it's tremendously useful, but it's not translatable. I have yet to find a VA that understands shorthand.
Well, it's a lost art. I'll share. I was at a conference once, and this was mind-blowing for me. There's an author named Mike Rhodes, and it's it's never spelled the way I think it should be, but it's ROHDES or something. And he created or popularized a concept he called sketch notes. And basically it's like a freehand, but you use drawings and icons rather than shorthand. And it's fascinating. I personally, if I'm going to remember something, I have to write it down. It has to be physically written down. Now, I'm happy to say that most AIs can read I use very fast printing. So AI can actually read it for the most part. Every now and then it'll tell me my handwriting's illegible, but just rarely. But I find that's how I remember, is when I write it. But I also find sometimes I get distracted by the writing and I'm like, oh, you're still talking. I'm sorry.
That would be my problem with anything that's beyond shorthand for symbols and stuff like that. If you're drawing pictures and stuff like that, I'll end up doodling, and not in a way that'll be helpful. So I get that. So Jeff, I'll tell you, I really am enjoying this conversation. I'd love to know where you'd like to go next.
Well, I think I want to be mindful of your time. So let's talk about what people need to know if they want to work with you. So first of all, let's start with the important things. Where can they go to connect with you? You asked me a question before we hit record. I want to replay it back to you. If they go to your LinkedIn profile, is it current? And what does it say people can do to work with you?
It is mostly current. It needs two quick touch-ups because there are things that have happened in the last 6 weeks. So if somebody wants to work with me, there are really a couple different inlets. One is if they're interested in the book that I'm writing, the easiest way to do that will be LinkedIn, because it'll be all over LinkedIn when it actually launches. If they want to be on the podcast Unique This Week, again, LinkedIn's a great choice. If they want to work with us on the wealth protection and money acceleration platform, that is the group I work with, that's for the nonprofits, the family offices, the foundations, the verticals with parked money. The easiest thing, again, is to reach out via LinkedIn, and I can give them a lot more information at that point. We can have that first 15 to 30 minute conversation and see if it's something that's going to, be of interest to them, or if they have people they want to bring for that. It's also a way I can talk to them about if they wanted to be a consultant with us. So, I mean, LinkedIn's really the best way. You still can pretty much Google my name and still find good contact for me there. For a long time, I worked really hard at optimizing my name under organic search. It's still pretty effective. I haven't been doing as much of it. I have a YouTube channel for the Unique This Week, but they're all old episodes at this point because I had to go on hiatus. So hopefully that answers part of it.
Absolutely.
The one other thing I would say, I mean, Buzz and I put together some basic rules, and they're really simple. We all have to like each other. We all have to trust each other, and nobody's allowed to create ongoing drama. So as long as you can pass those 3 rules, it's worth reaching out. If you can't pass those 3 rules, then it's probably not, because it'll come to pass pretty quickly. It's funny. It's a fairly it's a good litmus test, Jeff.
It is an excellent litmus test. I would add, for me, it's always, is it fun? Because if it's not fun, I can't even pretend to care.
Well, so Jeff, that leads into stuff that's in the book, but it's either a hell yes or it's a hell no. And if it either speaks to your soul and it really hits your heart and it makes your brain churn and it makes you happy. I'm also well, you can see him behind me if you look at the background, but I'm an unabashed Deadhead. And the very first exposure I had to the Grateful Dead was actually an interview with Garcia. And this leads to the fun thing in just a second. But it was a snippet where he said, "I've opted for fun in this lifetime," was the quote in the interview. And I was 14 years old, Jeff. I was 14. And I said, that is a mantra I can get behind. I can say that to myself every day and use it as a guidepost. Now, I've missed that guidepost along the way, but
absolutely.
I've made the mistake of straying from it, but it is a pretty core modality of what I do. If I'm not having fun, it will either show up in really bad ways or it will just derail what's going on. And it happens pretty fast now. There's a lot more ability to recognize than I used to have. So
I love that. And there's a quote, we don't grow. No, wait, I always get it backwards. We don't grow old we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing.
Yep.
And I went, damn, because I tried to be a big boy and act all grown up for a long time, and I repressed. I am a child at heart, and if people make me laugh, I can forgive almost anything. As long as it's funny, I'm good. But yeah, I don't want to work with people who are too serious. Now, before I forget, tell us a little bit about your book in terms of what's the timeline and how can we as an audience support you in that?
Well, I appreciate that tremendously. Timeline's probably July, August until it actually fully launches and is, into either self-publishing. And I'm exploring those options now, but it's written, it's manuscripted, it's ready for editors to take hold of and run from. And it's essentially it's a different take on networking and connecting than what most people have. Although, quite frankly, a lot of what you've touched on, Jeff, ties into pieces of the book. There are pieces in it that make sense that way. It's not a go-giver book. It's not a Way of the Dolphin book, to mention your other one earlier. It's not one of those that way. But it does, I think it brings a lot of lessons to people. I think it brings a lot of practical and honest evaluation of where people are at. And it gives them a system to operate on if they're interested in being a heart first, trust first connector. And that's really what that's about. So if you're a heart first, trust first connector, it's going to be great for you to read, but it's also great to pass on to people as a new modality and new mentality, a new way to think about things. And so that was really the goal with it. And it just came about because I was started realizing I was writing all these things that tied together. And I said, let's repurpose this and make it actually a more fleshed out version and make it a full book. And so I spent a bunch of time on that, and been very good. I will tell you that along the lines of fun and being a grown up and all those things, I'm really bad at answering. Somebody will say, well, where did you grow up? And I'll tell them I haven't done that yet, but my formative years were in Pennsylvania.
I always say I'll let you know when it happens.
Yeah, well, that's a very good response too, because the thing is, I don't have an intention of ever losing that inner joy that comes with the childlike, mentality of I'm hopefully more mature in my thinking than I was at 7 or 8, but I have as much fun as I did when I was 5, 6, 7, 8. I still love to get out and play. I still love to get out and have a good time. And my wife mirrors that. We're both very young at heart. And I think it's one of the things that will keep us around for a while. So
I love that. Well, I want to thank you, Andy, and I'll extend that to Mark, because the question I had for him, well, he asked who I should connect him with, and I said weirdos who love life and are changing the world. So Andy, you live up to that, and I want to thank you for hanging out with me.
I really appreciate it. Actually, I wear weirdo and freak actually equally well. I think it comes with passion, Jeff, and I love your passion. I love your drive. I love the jib. You capture life beautifully. And you have a great energy about you. And I want to thank you for having me as a guest. I want to explore things deeper. And thanks to Mark, I now know who to bring you. Thanks to your comments earlier, I now know how to bring you too. So thank you very much for the time.
And I promise we will have fun, just for the record.
Well, I've opted for fun in this lifetime, Jeff. There we are.